Hey everybody, Jeff Stone here. I wanted to make a quick video here to help out with the t-shirt assignment because so many students had the exact same questions slash problem, we'll call it, or challenge, maybe that's a better word. All right, so here's the main concern that's tripping people up here. The products page will either display the form for them to fill out, or it will display what they selected, right? So it will either display a form saying here, put your name and address, or it will display this. Here's your name and address, and here's what you ordered, right? One or the other. Now, I did hear a lot of people saying that, well, we haven't done that yet. And the truth is we have done this, actually. It's in our palindrome assignment. Now, granted, this palindrome, this is the home page, right? Index. But if I choose a palindrome here, say 2 palindromes, and I'm going to search for the word dog. Yes, it's true. When I submit this, it goes to a new page. That is true. But what happens on this page? This is the palindromes page. One of two things will happen. Either it will display this form right here, so display a form on palindromes.php, or when I click submit, it will reload this same exact page, but instead of showing the form, it shows this, right? So it either shows the output display or the palindrome form. Just like this assignment, it's either going to show the form or it's going to show the output, right? So it either showed the form or it showed the output. In this case, it's now showing the output. Now, the difference I think that's tripping people up is in this particular case, let's go back to the home page. When I choose something here and I choose something here, when I go to process this, there's no error trapping on anything that I fill out in this particular form, right? It doesn't check for any errors here. So it's not looking for an error and then trying to capture and make a note of that error on this same page, right? So that may be what's throwing people off. So I'm going to code up a quick little thing here to show you what it would look like to have a page either load a form or the results, and how to deal with error trapping and all of that, all in just a handful of lines of code, right? So here we go. I've created a project here that we can see right here called self-post, and there's no code in it at all yet. So let's just go ahead and start off by just making the form, right? So we're going to echo out form, and it's going to have a method of post, and the action, I can either put for the action the actual page that so the idea is we're going to refresh whatever page we're on. I happen to be on the index page here. Yours will be products.php, but what the page is doesn't matter. It's just the idea is refresh the same page, right? So I can leave that blank, which means refresh the same page, or I can explicitly say refresh the same page, right? Index.php is the page I'm on. We're just going to leave it blank though, okay? And then let's go ahead and close out the form before I forget, because I know I will. All right, and then in between it, we're going to put a few inputs, okay? So we're going to echo out an input that's a text, and we'll give it a name of first, and then let's close that, and then we'll make a last name, reset button, and a submit button. Okay, so this is last, this is reset, don't need a name for reset. This is submit. And now, we've never really named our submit button before, but we're going to this time in a minute, because naming it will help us determine how to decide if we're going to load the form or we're going to load the results. Okay, so let's just start here though. This is a simple form. I'm going to go ahead and put in here a placeholder. Right, and so it's going to be first name, just to remind us to put our first name and last name, okay? So now if I refresh the page, simple enough, we have a nice little form here, okay? So the question is, the idea for this simple form, this is not your t-shirt, which has a lot more complex data in it, but the simple idea is I'm going to enter my name, and then when I click submit, nothing will happen right now, but when I click submit, eventually it's just going to say Beavis Jones right there, and there will be no form, right? So in other words, if something, who knows what, we'll talk about that in a minute, display this form. Else, the comment here, display forms input from the user, right? Display the first and last name. Okay, what's the if statement? Well, if form has not been processed. I think that's how you spell that. If the form has not been processed. Well, how do we know it's not been processed? That's the question, right? But I think by looking at this, we can all agree that this is the concept here. This is what we're looking for. So how do we know if it's been processed? Well, there's a simple way that I use all the time. We can give the submit button a name. And I'm going to call it, I don't know, sub button, right? Something like that. Call it whatever you want. What I'm going to do is check to see if the sub button post variable exists. The only way that this variable can exist in the post, right? And by the post, I mean, you know this, right? Sub button. The only way that that can exist is if this button has been pushed. Just like the only way that first can exist is if this button has been pushed, right? The first here. Or last. The only way that that can even exist at all is if the button has been pushed. Okay, so you may ask yourself, well, why not just check to see if this is populated? Well, because the user might have forgotten to put that in there, right? So I'm going to check to see if this has been populated, because you can't not populate it. If you click the button, bam, it's populated. It exists, right? So you can't not have this if the button has been clicked. Whereas it is possible to click the button and still have nothing in this field because the user left it blank, all right? So we're going to check to see if post sub button, what about it? We're going to check to see if it's empty. Empty. Because if it's empty, that means that the form has not been processed, right? This will always have a value if the form's been processed, right? So for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to do a var dump here of the post. Right, we'll just dump that out real quick. And I'm going to refresh this. And there's nothing right now. The post is empty. However, the moment I click this, you will see the page will go blank, right? So the reason it goes blank is because I'm having this as my else statement, right? But when I click that, let's go ahead and put in here the var dump here as well, all right? So now, let's refresh this. Again, first loading the page, the array, the post array is empty. The moment I click submit, now the post array has the first name. Well, the first name's empty. Last name, empty. But the sub button has the value submit. So it has a value. It's not empty. So that means that we can check this right here. Whenever you click the submit button, this becomes a populated value. Okay, so now, if that's empty, well, then spit out the form, because that means that this form has never been run, right? If it's empty, it means the form's never been run. Okay, good enough. Let's get rid of all this. All right, so that's part one. Now, we're not going to deal with any errors just yet. We've just got the form to display, and then we want something else to happen when they click submit. So for now, we can just simply say, hello, right? So if I refresh this here, when I click submit, whether I put data in there or not, doesn't matter. If I click submit, it's going to echo hello. Because when I click submit, this became populated, and therefore it's not empty. And so since it's not empty, this doesn't get run. This does. What do I really want to be here, though? I want it to print out the first name and the last name, right? So we can just simply say echo post first with a space, and then echo the last name. Now this will only work if I actually put some data in there, right? So let's just actually put data in there so we don't have to worry about that. So Beavis Johnson, right? I click submit and it spits out Beavis Johnson. Fabulous, right? If I go back to the home page here and I just put Beavis, well, it's just going to put Beavis, right? No problem, okay? It's just printing out what's in the post variables. Well, there's nothing in last and there's something in first. But that's not good enough, right? If they forget to put the last name, we want to trap that and we want to send it back to reload the page, and we want to populate this form with the stuff that they did fill out and leave the part that didn't fill out blank so they can redo it and give them a message along the way. All right, so if the button has been pushed, just think of that line right there asking the question, has the button been pushed? If it has, or if it has not, I should say, if it has not been pushed, then load the form. If it has been pushed, the button has been pushed, has, and we'll say button has not been pushed. All right? That's what this little thing right here says, that the button was not pushed. All right? Okay. Now, once it has been pushed, we're here. And we just echo out the results. Well, that's not quite what we want, so let's make some error trapping here. Let's go first with this. If this is empty, we'll go with not empty. Then let's go ahead and set a variable called first, what's called f, equal to post first. All right, and get rid of all this. So if it's not empty, let's go ahead and set this variable called f equal to post, and otherwise, let's say f is equal to nothing, and we'll say that error code plus equals 1. All right, let's go ahead and initialize error code up here. This is just like we did in the palindrome page where we're going to keep track of the errors. We're not going to spend too much time on that because the main focus is seeing if you can post or you can get the error back to the page and reload it with the data in the form here, right? So we're going to do the same thing here with last. We'll go with L here. Last. Go with L here. And we're going to say that last name problem is error code 2, right? Okay, so what we've done so far, we've said if nobody pushed the button, if the button's never been pushed, like the first time we ever loaded the page, show the form. Otherwise, if the button has been pushed, initialize this error code variable, look for the post values first and last, which theoretically should exist because the button was pushed, so those should be in the post. But if somebody left something out, they left out the first or last name, then we're going to say, okay, put nothing there, increment the error counter, right? All right, now, here comes the tricky part that's been throwing people off. If there is an error code value, in other words, it's not 0, right? If it's 1, 2, or something else, then we're going to go ahead and do header, parenthesis, location. And now for location, I can put explicitly the name of the file, which is itself, which in this case is index, or in your case will be products.php, or I can just simply build the URL variable right here by just putting the question mark and building the variable there, because it's going to go to wherever that is. Well, wherever that is just, it's going to just tack that onto the URL that you're on, right? So we'll say first equals, close quote, concatenate on F, open the quote, and say and L equals, close quote, concatenate on the L, close it, or reopen the quote, and say that error code is equal to whatever error code is. And there you go. That's our header statement. Okay? So if we run this right now, if I put in the data, nothing will happen because we're not echoing anything out, right? So let's make that happen. So I'm saying if this, then let's increment the error counter or not. And again, increment the error counter or not, assign values to L and F. then if there is something in the error counter, we're going to redirect. But if we're not redirecting because error counter is still 0, then we'll do else echo first name space last name. Right? So either way, it's grabbing the values from the post. And when all is said and done, if the user didn't make any mistakes, F should have a name in it and L should have a name in it, and error code should be 0, which means that this line will run. But if they made a mistake, either F will be empty or L will be empty. Either way, EC will have some value, 1, 2, or 3 if they missed both. Okay, so let's just run this and let's not make a mistake. Put all the data in correctly. And Butthead Jones. And it seems to work just fine. Okay. Now, if we make a mistake here, Butthead, but I leave off the last name, nothing's going to happen. The page is going to completely reload and wipe out the fields, but the URL variable will make its way up to here. And there we go. It put F equals Butthead and L equals nothing, right? So this redirect worked, no problem. It put in the values we did have, which was just the first name, and that's fine. Okay, so now the last thing we got to do is, in the event that we're loading the form, we need to look and see if these variables exist. The only time that you're going to be looking in the URL is if you load the form. If you're not loading the form, why would you be looking in the URL, right? If you're not loading the form, that means you're doing all this stuff down here, which is theoretically you're trying to display the output. Okay. So here we are. The button has not been pushed. Now let's make sure we understand that. When I goof up here, I leave this blank and I leave this blank and I click submit. Yeah, the button is pushed now, right? I push it now. Let's clear this out so we can see this a little bit more cleanly. Okay. So let's put Jones for the last name here. I'm going to push the button right now. At this instant, when I push that button, for just a split second, this was not empty. So it did not actually display the form. It actually went here. Even though I can clearly see that the form is here, it actually did run this code. But in this code, it found that first name was missing. So it incremented the error code, right? It found that last name was not missing, so it just populated this L variable with last name. Either way, it built this URL here, and it redirected back to this page, this very page we're on, the index page. So this line never ran. Well, so since this page reloaded, but there was no button push, right? The first button push that I did a second ago ran this code, right? It did not run this. But once this code runs, because there's an error, this line runs. When this line runs, it refreshes the page with the button no longer being pushed. The post has been cleared out, and it's like refreshing the page. So because the post has been cleared out, the form's going to display again. And sure enough, the form's displaying again, and up here are the variables. Well, now I just got to grab them and stick them in the appropriate place, and we're basically done. So since that form's being displayed, I'm going to check and see if not empty, the get of just F, right? That's the value that we called it in the URL here, right? So F. Then we're going to say that we'll just go with the same variable here. F is equal to get F, right? Otherwise, we'll just say that F is equal to nothing. Pretty straightforward, right? I'll do the same thing for L. L, 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 and L, right? So now, in the event that the button has not been pushed, we're going to immediately look and see if there's anything in the get. If there is, we'll assign whatever's in get F to the variable F, whatever's in get L to variable L. If there's nothing there, we'll put nothing there. Now we just got to display F and L inside of our first name and last name, right? We're just going to put value equals something, right? And then value equals something. What's the something here? It's going to be F. right? So we got to just do our concatenation here, like so. And then same thing here, we're going to concatenate on the L. And that should do it. Okay, we don't have an error message yet, but this functionally will now at least keep the data, right? So here we go. Let's clear this out. Load it, and I will type in Bob, but I'll leave off the last name. And what should happen is when I click submit, the page should look exactly like it does right now, except the URL will have some stuff in it. And to look, here we go. And there we go. It kept Bob up there. And the last name is empty because there was no last name there, right? Now, the moment I put Jones in here and I delete this, Jones should stay and Bob should be blank, and it should look exactly like this. The URL will change though, and it does. If I leave them both blank, the URL will change to both blank, and the form will just reload again, right? If I actually put some data in there, then it will display the data, right? Okay, so the last thing, we're going to throw a couple error messages, right? Easy enough. We're going to check to see if the error code variable is empty. So if EC, let's see, if empty get EC, then we'll say EC is equal to get. Get used to that line of code. You'll write it 1,000 times, right? All right. Else EC is 0. Okay. So that's it right there. Now, if I have a value in EC, we'll just print out an error message, right? We can do a switch statement. Switch on EC. EC. And we're looking at 3 cases, right? Remember, there's 1, 2, or 3, right? So case 1, and we'll go ahead and throw the break in now. Case 2, case 3, and we're going to say here, we'll go echo and put a paragraph, and we'll say enter first name, close the paragraph, and then we'll change this to last name and this to first and last name. That should do it. Okay, so let's run it, and then I'll talk you through the code one more time, then we'll be done. All right, let's clear this out. If I put only the first name, I click submit, first name should stay, and I should get a message that says enter last name. And I do. Okay, if I put last name, should get a message that says enter last name, or enter first name, and the last name should stay. I do. If I leave them both blank, enter first and last, and if I finally do it right, it displays the name and not the form. Okay, this is all the code that we need for this. This should get you going. Just keep in mind that your t-shirt form, there's just going to be a whole lot more in this form here, and there's going to be a whole lot more of these statements down here in the else. But other than that, this is basically the same idea, and there's going to be a whole lot more of these in this part of it, right? But let's kind of look at what's happening, right? So this is if the button has not been pushed. That's this line right here. All right, so if it's not been pushed, then we'll say we're going to load the form, but first we're going to check the URL for any get variables, right? We're going to look for any URL get variables, and then we're going to display the form. Display the form potentially with the variable values from the get. That's what's going on right here and right here. All right. Then we're going to do a display the error message. Error message if needed. Okay. So in an ideal world, here's what would happen. Page loads for the first time, and this is the only thing that displays, right? Because the get will be empty if the page is loading for the first time. So this displays. Because the get's empty, none of this will run, right? Just this will happen. Now, they click the submit button, And once they click the submit button, then the button has been pushed, and so this entire if statement will not run. This will. Now ideally, if they did not miss any data, this line runs and you're done. But if they missed any data, we'll catch it right here, and then we'll redirect with this header, which will send us back to the same page, and it'll now run this if statement because the button has not been pushed. And this will all run. And now this time it's going to find some stuff in the get, it's going to populate it in here, and then it's going to display the error message telling us to fill out the pieces we missed. We fill out the pieces we missed, click submit, and hopefully we get here. Otherwise, we repeat the cycle. Okay? So here we just have a simple, in the case that the button has been pushed, set error counter. And here we basically see what stuff they got right and what stuff they missed. Right? That's what these two lines do. And then, lastly, if they got it all right, let's go, if they missed anything, then redirect. Otherwise, print the data. That's it. It redirects with the values that they got correct and leaves the rest of them blank. So that's it, guys. This is the whole page. I can't quite get it to fit on one page here, but I'll actually just give you this code. Now, don't just copy and paste it, but look at it and study it and try to understand it in conjunction with watching this video.